Ben & Jerry's is the best-selling ice cream brand in America. Nearly $1 billion in sales every year. Half-baked, Cherry Garcia, fish food. You know them. But in December of 2025, the brand was handed over to a $9 billion corporation called the Magnum Ice Cream Company. And within 30 days, every single person who had been protecting the quality of your favorite ice cream was removed. This is the story of what is happening to Ben & Jerry's right now. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what makes this ice cream different from everything else in the freezer aisle. And it starts with something most people do not know. Ben Cohen can barely taste or smell anything. He was born with a rare condition called anosmia. For most people, that would be a reason to stay far away from the food business. But for Ben, it became the reason his ice cream is unlike anything else on the market. Because he could not taste subtle differences in flavor, he built an ice cream that was designed around texture. Massive chunks of cookie dough, thick ribbons of fudge, whole brownie pieces, caramel cores you could dig into with a spoon. Every pint of Ben & Jerry's is packed with stuff, not as a gimmick, but because the man who created it literally could not enjoy ice cream any other way. That philosophy shaped the entire brand. Real cream, real sugar, real vanilla beans from Madagascar. The fudge brownies in Chocolate Fudge Brownie come from an actual bakery in Yonkers, New York. Every ingredient was chosen with intention, and you can taste it, or in Ben's case, feel it. That is why Ben & Jerry's does not taste like every other ice cream. And that is exactly what is now at risk. That quality didn't happen by accident. It started with two guys who had no idea what they were doing. In 1978, Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield, two friends who had known each other since 7th grade gym class, took a $5 correspondence course in ice cream making. They pooled their savings, renovated an old gas station in Burlington, Vermont, and opened their first ice cream shop. Ben had failed as a potter. Jerry had been rejected from medical school twice. They had no business plan and no experience. They just believed you could make great ice cream and still give a damn about people. And that scrappy beginning turned into something nobody expected. Cherry Garcia, named after the Grateful Dead's frontman Jerry Garcia, became one of the most iconic flavors in American food history. Half-baked has been the #1 best-selling Ben & Jerry's flavor for over 7 consecutive years. By the late 90s, the brand had become a cultural institution, not just ice cream, but a symbol of what American entrepreneurship could look like when it stayed small, stayed weird, and stayed honest. Then came the year 2000. Unilever, the massive multinational corporation behind brands like Dove soap and Hellmann's mayonnaise, made an offer to buy Ben & Jerry's. The founders did not want to sell, but under the law, they could not say no. The offer was too high to turn down. So Ben & Jerry did something no one had ever done before. They agreed to the sale, but only on one condition. There had to be an independent board of directors with real legal power, not a suggestion box, not for show. This board would have actual authority over the quality of the ice cream, the integrity of the brand, and the identity of the company. Unilever would control the finances and operations. The independent board would control everything that made Ben & Jerry's what it was. And for 25 years, that arrangement held. Unilever expanded Ben & Jerry's from 4 countries to 46. Sales grew 6 times over, but the recipe did not change. The chunks stayed chunky. The cream stayed real. Because every time Unilever's cost accountants looked at the ingredient list and saw room to cut, there was a board in the way, a board with the power to say no. Now here is why that board mattered so much. You can see exactly what happens to an ice cream brand when there is no protection. Breyers was founded in 1866 in Philadelphia. William Breyer made ice cream by hand with 4 ingredients: milk, cream, sugar, and vanilla. For over 100 years, that simplicity was the entire point. Families trusted Breyers because they knew exactly what was in it. Then Unilever bought Breyers in 1993. Without any independent board and without legal protections, the changes came fast. The cream content was reduced. Gums and thickeners were added, including carrageenan, guar gum, and corn syrup. The containers shrank from a half gallon to 1.5 quarts, while the price stayed the same. Then the quiet rebrand happened. 40% of Breyers products were reclassified from ice cream to frozen dairy dessert, because under federal law, they no longer contained enough cream to legally call themselves ice cream. Most people never noticed what happened to Breyers. The carton looked the same. The logo was the same. The spot it sat in at the grocery store was the same. But if you flipped it over and read the fine print, it no longer said ice cream. It said frozen dairy dessert. In 2024, Breyers agreed to pay $8.85 million in a class action settlement after it was discovered that their natural vanilla flavor contained fake vanilla made in a lab, while the label implied it was the real thing. This is what happens when there is no one guarding the recipe. And here is the part that should concern you. The company that did all of this to Breyers now has full control over Ben & Jerry's too. Not Unilever anymore. A new company. In March of 2024, Unilever announced it was spinning off its entire ice cream division into a standalone business. In December of 2025, that spin-off was completed. The new company is called the Magnum Ice Cream Company. It is headquartered in Amsterdam. It began trading on stock exchanges in New York, London, and Amsterdam, with a market value of over $9 billion. Under its roof are Breyers, Ben & Jerry's, Klondike, Talenti, Popsicle, and dozens of other brands. 7,500 jobs were cut during the restructuring. And then something happened that very few people outside the business world noticed. Within weeks of the spin-off, the new company moved against Ben & Jerry's independent board, the very board that had protected the ice cream for a quarter century. The board chair was removed in mid-December. New rules were introduced overnight, including a 9-year term limit that forced out 2 more directors. By January 1st, 2026, every single independent board member was gone. The board that once had the power to protect the quality, the recipe, and the identity of Ben & Jerry's was reduced to 2 people, the CEO appointed by the parent company, and 1 corporate director. The shield that had kept Ben & Jerry's from becoming the next Breyers was dismantled in less than a month. And the new company's own corporate filings state that it plans to undertake a comprehensive supply chain transformation program to address what it calls inefficiencies. In corporate language, that means cutting costs. That is the same kind of language that preceded every ingredient change Breyers ever made. Jerry Greenfield, who co-founded the company 47 years ago, resigned. He said the independence they were promised was gone. Ben Cohen stayed, but not because he is okay with what happened. He launched a public campaign called Free Ben & Jerry's. He wrote in Time magazine in January of 2026 that the brand cannot survive without its heart. A group of investors who actually believed in what the brand stood for stepped forward, ready to make an offer. The response from the Magnum Ice Cream Company was clear. Ben & Jerry's is not for sale. On January 11, 2026, a lawsuit was filed against Magnum, alleging that the company violated the original acquisition agreement by stripping the board of its independence. The case is ongoing. There is no resolution yet. So here is where things stand right now. The people who created Ben & Jerry's no longer have any control over what happens to it. The legal protections that kept the recipe, the quality, and the ingredients safe for 25 years have been removed. The new parent company also owns Breyers, a brand that has already been downgraded from real ice cream to frozen dairy dessert under the same kind of corporate ownership. That company's own documents describe plans to cut costs across its entire supply chain. Nobody is saying that Ben & Jerry's is going to change tomorrow, but the wall that prevented it from changing is gone. The only people still fighting to put it back are the two founders who built the whole thing in a gas station almost 50 years ago. The next time you pick up a pint of half-baked or Cherry Garcia, it might taste exactly like it always has. But for the first time in 25 years, there is no one with the power to guarantee that it will. If this story matters to you, subscribe to America's Land Empires. We cover the stories behind the brands America trusts and what happens when someone else takes the wheel.